Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So let's continue with our project here. In here, what I want us to do is to be able to create a click and drag box around or inside the canvas. All right, so the first thing we ought to do is fix the image loading thing. So there's a slight problem here. If I try to load by the way, all the code in here is available in the link in the description. That's the source code to this project. So if I try to load a non-square image, for example, this one, the width is higher than the height, it still stretches the image to full capacity. So if this is what you want, then this is fine, no problem. Let me try a different image like this one. It doesn't look very squished, but the height is longer. So if you want to maintain the ratio of the image, you can do so here. So right here where it is, where we're drawing the image, what we can do is adjust the height in reference to the width. So what we need to do is find out the ratio of the image. So let's find out let's say height is equal to, here we want to find out the ratio between the height and the width. So the actual width and height of an image is contained in natural width and natural height properties. So what I'm going to do is just divide, let's see, the natural height divided by the natural width. Something like this. Okay, so once we divide those, then that tells us the ratio between the height and the width, and then what we can do is multiply that by the canvas width, because that's what's going to be the maximum width of the image itself. So we can do height times canvas width, like so. Okay, so that should give us the correct aspect ratio for every image we load. So as you can see, this image is like that. Let me try to load an image that's longer on the height, and you can see that's what's happening. So it's up to you. If you don't want this behavior, you can set it back to just fit the image around. Now it would be better when you're preparing your images to make them square images, because those load much better instead. All right, so now that we're here, we need to do the click and drag here to create boxes. So I don't want to remove that button there. And also what I want to do is create a variable that tells us when an image is present. So we can call this variable image added, like that. We can start it off as false, like that. And then we can change it to true when we do add an image. So at this point, we can just say image added is equal to true, which means an image was added. Okay, that way when we click and drag, we should always have an image in there before we allow that click and drag behavior. Okay, so when the mouse is down, also what I need to do, I need two things, because to create a box, for example, so let's see here how we can create one. Let's see here, click and drag. So once we click and drag here, I want to write a box within here. So we know the X and Y values over here, but we're going to mute this for a second. So when the mouse moves instead, I want us to create a box. So here I'm going to say context dot, there is a function called viewRect, like that. That's for a filled in rectangle. So what you need to give it is the XY coordinates on which to put the box, and then the width and height. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is when we click mouse down here when the mouse is down, I want us to save the coordinates of the mouse at that point. So here I'll create another variable. I'm going to say initial mouse pause. Okay, or we could just call it mouse down pause, short for position, something like that, is equal to. Now this should start with 0, 0. Now I want to use an object to save these values. So the object will have an x component which is equal to 0 and a y component that's equal to 0. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm gonna go to the mouse down event here. When the mouse is down, we set it to true, but then we're gonna get the x and y values here. So I'm gonna copy that and let's put this in there, and the y values as well. Copy that and put our y value over there. Okay, so when we do that, we set that value there, and then the xy components of so let's get back here for a second. So imagine I want to click and drag to create a square around this item. So where I first click, that's the XY position of the box, right? So we can use this, but we need to know the width and height of the box as well. So what we're going to do is, while the user is dragging, we're going to grab the X and Y coordinates of that action as well, and then subtract from the original. That's what will tell us the width and height. So let's see that. So mouse position is here, but then when we move the mouse, we do context.fillRect. Okay, now the fillRect requires X and Y coordinates, so what we're going to do is we'll start with X and Y, so that's going to be contained inside this mouse down pose.x and .y, because that's where we put them. Okay, so to see this more clearly, we can do this instead. Something like so. So key and value pair, key and value pair. So same thing here, but what about the length and height here? So we can say let width is equal to, now the width here will be equal to the current mouse X and Y here. So I'm gonna, the position of the X and Y. So the width is for the X, so we're gonna leave that there, and I'm gonna duplicate this. This one goes to top, and here it's Y, and this is height. Okay, so that's the width and the height of the box that we should give. So I'm going to copy that and put that on width, comma, height. Okay, so that's the fill rectangle there. So it's going to have a gray color because that's the original load color there. So if I now click and drag, you can see that happening right now. Okay, so the fill rect, the color is to set the color, you can set it here by saying context.fill style. Actually, that's the one. And then you can put a color here. You can say gray. You can use any color mode, any CSS color type, and it's gonna work just fine. So I'm gonna refresh and click and drag. As you can see now, it's happening here like so. So the thing that's going on here is, like I said with Canvas, once you create something, you can't really move it or do anything with it. You're just painting on the pixels themselves. So this is what we are kind of doing here when I do this and go like that. So you can see kind of many applications you can use this for. For example, drawing, you can easily make a drawing program here. That's if you, For example, if you want to draw a line, let me show you how you can achieve something like that. So here you can put the X and Y right on the current X and current Y, actually. Yeah, actually we can, wait a minute. The width, this is not even the correct width. This is just the current X and Y position, right? So this formula is wrong. We need to subtract from the original to get the correct values. But let me just show you an example of how you can create a drawing tool, for example, inside Canvas. So if I do this X and Y and then just put 1 pixel, 1 pixel there, that's the width and the height, and that way you can actually draw some stuff on the box. As you can see here, when I do this, I'm actually drawing stuff. Now it doesn't look very clear, so let me increase the box size, right? That will increase. And as you can see here, I'm actually creating a drawing software or drawing program like Paint or something similar. Let's increase this even further. Let's see what we have. And then you can have buttons here. Okay, so there we go. As you can see, we can draw on the canvas like so. Let's see here. Okay. Something like that. Okay. So as you can see, that's what you can do with Canvas, and then you can save this as an actual image. But this is not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to create a box. So let's get back to business. Okay. So here what we want to do is the width and height should be the current value here. And then the current value is supposedly supposed to be bigger. So we're going to subtract the old value, the original value, the mouse position when the mouse went down. So I'm going to put that there and say minus dot x and minus that dot y. Okay, so that makes our width and height. So let's test this out and see it's working as intended. As you can see here, it's doing a great job. Okay, but what I want is when I click and create a box, it should get rid of the old boxes here. So the only way to do this is to actually clear the canvas every time we do this. So here I'm going to do ctx.clearRect. So the clearRect creates a rectangle that clears the canvas. So we're going to tell it where to start the clearing process, and that's the 0,0, and then how much of it, the width and height, and I just want the entire canvas to be cleared, so I'm going to do canvas.width and canvas.height, like so. So in this manner, we can actually create a box like that, and when I click and drag again, that box is gone, and we keep creating new boxes like so. And as you can see, even when I go back like this, it doesn't mess up like it was doing before, because if you don't clear the canvas, this is the action that you get. So let's refresh. If I go this way, I can't really go back because this part is already painted. So once I paint it, I can't unpaint it unless I clear the canvas. So that's how we do it. So click and drag, etc., etc. Okay, now we just want the outline, not the inside, to be dark. So what we're gonna do, instead of fill style, we're gonna use stroke style, and instead of fill rect, it's gonna be stroke rect, like that. Okay. So let's test that out, and there we go. So now we have an outline instead, like so. Now we need to restrict it so that this only happens when we have an image in here. So if mouse down and okay, what we could do is just say mouse moved actually. So we're going to say if image added or not image added. On here we want to return. So we exit the function, but then we tell the user to add an image first. So we're going to say alert, please add an image first. Okay, something like this. Let me remove this line, we don't need it. So back here, let's refresh, and if I click and drag, please add an image first. Let's load the image that we want. And now if I click and drag, okay, so as you can see now, every time I click and drag, it actually clears the canvas, which clears the image as well. So what we want to do is create a redraw function, a function that actually redraws everything in the canvas. So we're going to do function redraw like that. Okay. So the redraw function is supposed to add the image again once it does a draw. So we have to call the add image every single time. And let's see here. Now the image will always be already loaded. And in order to draw an image, we do this. So what I'm going to do is I want to make this one global so that we can grab the same image object and just redraw it again. So let's do this. Right here, I'm going to say on the onload event, I'm going to save the image. I'm going to say I'll create a variable called main image is equal to img, like that. Okay. And then on the redraw, all I have to do is copy this, and I ask myself if main image exists, then we continue and draw the image like so. Now we have to, I need to know what height is, so I'm going to grab this and put it here like so. Okay, so that's the redraw function there. Goody. So let's go back to here. After we clear the rectangle, we redraw the page. We redraw the canvas. We need to know what main image is, so let's create a variable here. Let's set it to null, which is an empty, like that. Okay, so let's give it a shot. So if I now load my image, now this time I click and drag, it doesn't work out. Let's see if there's any errors in the console. So image is not defined. Okay, so I'm thinking in the redraw I'm using image instead of main image. So let me use that instead, like so. Okay, so let's refresh. I'm gonna click load once more and then click and drag. So as you can see now, every time I move my mouse, the canvas is being redrawn completely. This is why it can remove the box that already exists and give me this effect. So this includes the image itself. Everything is being redrawn completely once I do this. All right, very cool. Now I want to be able to move this box around once I create it. So if I create it like this, I don't want to create a new one, because if I click within the box, it just creates a new one. But I want to be able to move it around once I create it. So in order to do that, we need to know exactly where this box is so that we check if the mouse pointer is inside that box, then we move the existing box. So what I want to do is save the current coordinates of the box. So in that case, we need to create another variable called TempBox, something like this. So this is going to be an empty object or something, TempBox, a temporal box like that. Let me just set it to maybe no for a start. So let's go to TempBox here. I'm going to copy that. So here we know exactly what the box is. We know the X and Y position of the box, and we know its width and height, the current box, right? So we just need to save that information more permanently. So we're going to do TempBox and say .x is equal to, and then we're going to put this one here. All right. So that's all we do. We just actually, let me set this to an empty object so that it knows it's an object, so we don't get problems there. So y, and then width, and then of course height. So these are all the params we need to create a box. So over here, mouse X, mouse Y, and then width and height. That's all. All right, so we save that information there. So you can put save TempBox params. You can put comments there. All right, so with that in mind, now we are able to tell where that box is.